so much for attending our panel on leveraging digital storytelling and social media to build your organization's network. I am Matt Silva.
And I am Charlotte Hill, and excuse my slightly nasally voice, I'm getting over a cold, but still very happy to be with you guys today.
Awesome. This is actually my first time to boot camp. I've been invited a couple times but wasn't able to attend, so it's nice that the first time I'm coming, I'm actually getting to talk about my work, so it's exciting. But to begin, we'd like to share a little bit about what EARN does, which is the organization that we both work for. EARN is a nonprofit that gives low-income working families the power to create prosperity for generations. As the nation's leading microsavings provider, EARN gives families the tools to build wealth and achieve life-changing goals, such as saving for college.
Blah, 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 blah.
So this might be the reaction you get when you start talking about your mission statement and your general messaging. The challenge really is, how can you talk about your work in a way that's compelling and helps you engage new people and build your network? So we'd like you to show you another way that EARN is talking about our work so you can get a better sense.
For me personally, education has been the basis for achieving the American dream.
My father came here as a farm worker. He just assumed that we would go to college. You know, we all assumed we were going to go to UC Berkeley, and we all did.
My mom was very verbally abusive and physically abusive. My mom used to clean the office of an architect, and I would go and I would see the blueprints and all the drawings that they had, and I remember saying it to her that I wanted to be an architect when I grew up. She just walked by me and just said, you know, you have to go to school for things like that. You're not gonna do that. I know I always kind of carried that in my head, that I'm not gonna do that because that takes a lot of school, and I'm not gonna go to school. When I was 9 years old, my mom's husband started sexually abusing me. He came in my room when I was 12, and I jumped out the window. It was a second-story window, and I took off running. I got picked up at I think it was like a Walgreens type store. I ended up going to juvenile hall that night, and it was probably the best sleep I ever got. I don't ever remember somebody asking me how school was, if I was even in school. I remember them asking, hey, when are you having a baby? To a 15, 16-year-old. We ended up breaking up and going our separate ways. And I became a single mom. I had the job, but minimum wage at that time was $5.25 an hour. Dreams didn't go beyond the next week's paycheck. I didn't go to college. My jobs, my opportunities, they're limited because of that. There was a lot of times I think about, like, I can't provide for these kids. Like, I'm not getting it done.
The people that EARN serves have been told no all their lives. No, you're not going to be successful. No, you're not going to go to college. No, you could never start that business. And when they come to this organization, they're surrounded by people who put yes in motion and allow them to give life to those dreams, to say yes to their kids, to say yes to themselves, and to say yes to their dreams.
I remember Julia, when she came to the workshop, she was determined to really make a difference for her children's lives.
What they were explaining was realistic. They put it back on me of like, I can do that. I'm gonna be able to do that. I can do that.
When people learn about EARN, they come here, they sign up, they go through money management training where they understand how to budget and save money every month, and then they start to save.
I have to save for my kids' college. That's the first thing that came to mind. I took my kids with me. We got very excited to start doing it.
They start to save in an account that's restricted, and over the course of years, they position themselves to successfully invest in their goals.
Parents literally run out of the workshops with the materials in hand and take them to the children to teach it right away.
She would come back and she'd sit down and she'd show me all the stuff that she learned so that I would know this is gonna make our life better.
She wants to go away to college.
I know I want to get a double major in law and in medicine.
She knows that there's money put away for her to be able to do that.
Somebody believes in me. It pushed me knowing that somebody was behind me.
My other daughter loves animals. She goes to an after-school program inside the San Francisco SPCA. I was like dying to have that. One of the things that she's gotten with her is that opportunity.
I finally have it now. It's just so much better.
These accounts have been proven to help families be much more likely for their kids to graduate from high school and go to college.
I'm already changing the cycles of my family because my kids, they're growing up with a totally different mentality and knowledge of money and saving in college. EARN is the way that it was done for all three of us, and it's done. I know it's done. I'm grateful. I'm so grateful.
Right, that's better, right? Not so dry, not so boring. So now you not only get a sense of what we do, but why it's important. So the key difference is that you're relating to EARN, not through words, not through concepts, not through an idea of an organization or a field, but through an actual person. And it's really important to remember that people relate to other people and not to organizations. And that's one of the key components of storytelling that makes it so powerful. So in this session, we'll share some of the best practices on storytelling and social media that we've identified at EARN, and also give you an opportunity to start mapping out a strategy for your organization so that you can use these tools to further your work. But first, we'd like to start with a little bit about us.
So hi, once again, my name is Charlotte Hill. I'm the Communications Associate at EARN. And we realized that instead of giving our bios, our kind of cut and dry bios for this presentation, we should really embody the practices that we're talking to you all about. So I want to share a little story about myself and why it is that I do what I do. I was a senior in high school, sitting in an English class, discussing with my fellow students a book that we had just read called Night by Levi Strauss. Has anybody in this room read that book? Okay, a few. I think it's assigned now in high school classes. So this is a book about a man who, as a child, survived living in a concentration camp during the Holocaust. And I was incredibly moved, as were my fellow students. And we were sitting in this group talking about how if we had been alive in the 1940s, we would have stepped in, we would have done something, we would not have allowed genocide to occur on our watch. And some of you may have heard this or read this story if you saw a blog post I wrote for boot camp before speaking. And a girl in the class who I didn't know very well came up and she was really upset. And she said, "You guys are such hypocrites. How could you be saying this? There is genocide happening right now on your watch and you're not doing anything about it." And being the skeptic that I was and still am, I was like, "What are you talking about? There's not genocide happening right now." And she said, "It's in Sudan, look it up. You'll see that I'm telling the truth." So during study hall that day, a senior in high school, I looked up Sudan and genocide. I didn't know where Sudan was, and realized that yes, in this region in Sudan called Darfur, genocide was actually happening on my watch. And for some reason, for the first time in my life, even though I had been a caring person and a considerate person, I like to think up until that point, something switched, and I became an activist in really a couple of, maybe a half hour's time. I went to my teachers and said, "I'm going to be giving speeches in your class about this genocide that's happening," and I started organizing students that day to go to a rally, actually here in San Francisco on the Golden Gate Bridge, and I became incredibly active to the point where about 5 years later, as a graduating college student, I was helping lead a national organization to fight genocide and mass atrocities. And it had all started with one girl speaking up in a classroom in high school. It really drove home the point to me that we can do so much with words. We can do so much through the sheer act of communicating with one another. And I really became drawn to social media because we can communicate so easily with one another and to such large groups of people. But I really wanted to find out, how can we do this effectively? How can we communicate so that we flip the switch in one another and we transform one another from just basic, considerate, caring individuals to people who really take action on issues that matter to us. So that's sort of the background of why I got involved in social media and communications for social good. And I look forward to sharing more of my experience with you throughout the panel.
All right, so I will also share a story. I wasn't inspired by a book, but by a TV show. So I think I first learned the power of stories when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And each day at school, there I am. So each day at school, I would play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with my friends in the schoolyard. And instead of being, Michelangelo or Donatello, I loved being Master Splinter, which most people don't actually play Master. It's kind of weird. But I would sit over near the tool shed on the blacktop, and I would sit there in this kind of yoga pose, and all the turtles.
Who is Master Splinter, by the way?
Oh, so if you don't know about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they're a crime-fighting troupe of turtles who live in the subway. They're really awesome. Check them out. But the role that Master Splinter would play specifically was that he'd kind of like advise the turtles, outline the mission, kind of identify who the villain was. And so I would tell all these stories to my schoolmates, and unfortunately they would then go off and terrorize other classmates and like try to beat them up and say that they were the evil guys or whatever. But what it kind of, when I reflect on that experience, I think about how telling those stories, and even in this fictitious sense, like really compels people to action. You can get people to do stuff if you tell them a good story, which is amazing. So now in my adult life, I really see kind of using those stories in the same way, but now luckily for social good instead of terrorizing my classmates. So as a community organizer before I got into this work, I had to tell stories to convince people to support efforts to end homelessness or support affordable housing or get people to become stewards of their parks. Because there's really no way to convince someone to do something based on data alone or statistics alone or figures alone. And it's hard to get people to do stuff because people are being overloaded with information. They're always being asked to like something or donate to something or participate in something. And have you heard this statistic? And 1 in 5 children this and that. But stories are really the thing when they're strategically communicated, well told, that can lend the meaning to your work that helps people sort of situate it within their own lives. The best stories create a role for your audience so that they feel like they want to participate in the work. So again, I want to sort of share some of the best practices we've developed here at EARN and have identified. But as you can see, stories have always played an important role in my life. So, why stories? Because they take your work to infinity and beyond. As I mentioned before, they really help provide a connection for the person watching to an actual real-life person instead of just a concept of your work. And when I say digital storytelling, the digital part is kind of flexible. Video is great, and it's because it's kind of the next best thing to an in-life storytelling experience. But it could be a blog post. It could be just storytelling principles that you use in your communications. But what makes storytelling and stories so compelling is really that you become invested in what happens to the person being portrayed. So when you watch the story of Julia, you start to care about Julia, and you start to care about what's going to happen to her. You see struggle, you sort of root for her so that she can overcome the struggles to be able to position her kids to be in a better position than she was. So stories are great, but stories need a medium to be told. And Charlotte's going to talk a little bit about social media and how that can provide a great platform for stories. Yeah.
All right. I swear I will explain the toast at some point on this slide. I'm sure that you've heard the basics of why social media is important in different panels today or throughout the past couple of years. You know that over 500 million people are on Facebook. You've heard all these statistics. You've probably also heard skeptics ask if Facebook is the new MySpace and how long is Twitter going to be Twitter before it's Twouter or Facebook, what really, people focusing on the channels specifically, these platforms, Facebook, Twitter, MySpace, YouTube, LinkedIn. What I want to say is it doesn't really matter whether Facebook or Twitter or YouTube are flashes in the pan or whether they're around 100 years from now. Social media, and just to clarify, those are, social media and social networks, these are like tools that are inherently social, just to give it the definition there. They've fundamentally transformed the way that we communicate online. And I think that's for two reasons. First of all, friends can more easily share information with other friends. That seems really basic, and when it comes to mafia wars, it seems kind of stupid, because we don't want to hear every time our friend has beat another mafia person on Facebook or planted something new in their Facebook garden.
I like Cityville, personally.
Cityville, yeah, I don't play Farmville or those games. But when it comes to your nonprofit or your organization, it's absolutely amazing that now we have a public space for people to share the organizations that they support and the work that they support with one another. Now, that's been done for dozens of years, for hundreds of years, really. And if you look back into your personal giving history, for example, who you've donated to, I think you'll find that most of the organizations are ones that that have been recommended to you by friends or by family. In fact, when I sat with a group of 20 young individuals in San Francisco a couple weeks ago, and we wrote down a list of which organizations we had given to, and we also wrote down a list of which causes we cared the most about, only 2 people in the room saw those lists match up. Because, in fact, even though we all cared about different issues, we tended to give to organizations that represented a personal connection for us that once again had been recommended by a friend or a family member. So those interactions are absolutely essential, the interactions that we have with friends and family. And now with social media, those interactions are made all that much easier. Now, the second piece that I think is so important is that with the plethora of information available on the internet, every potential supporter of your organization is now a skeptic. And I think that that is actually incredibly good, because individuals are feeling empowered enough to demand transparency from nonprofits. They want to know, and I'm assuming that many of you here are representing nonprofits, but this can go for other organizations as well. Individuals want to know that what you're saying about your organization is actually true. And now, if they feel that it's not true, they can write on your Facebook wall and they can tell you. So if you choose not to engage in Facebook or Twitter, first of all, a message that you're sending is that you don't want to be part of that conversation and you don't want to allow people the opportunity to speak their mind about your work, which is already kind of a bad place to be. But furthermore, I'm assuming that most of you in the room are actually doing very good work. You're not allowing people to vouch for you. You're not allowing people to have that authentic voice online and speak to the good work that you're doing. It is incredibly powerful when individuals on Facebook or Twitter vouch for you, because that communication is very authentic, and it's viewed as being more authentic than what you are saying about your own organization. So I think that those are kind of the key reasons why social media is so important to engage in when you're coming from a nonprofit perspective.
But the important question to ask is whether or not this stuff actually works, because at the end of the day, we all have goals to meet, grant deliverables, et cetera. We need to make sure that it actually works. So as they say, the proof is in the pudding. So we want to share with you an example that we used social media and storytelling for recently, which was a big event that we held last month, to leverage what we call a moment of opportunism. And actually, Charlotte's going to talk about that.
Yeah, so a moment of opportunism. This is a phrase that EARN's CEO, Ben Mangan, uses a lot, uses with me when we're talking about social media and communications work. Basically, this is a moment that you can see coming up on the horizon in your organization that you can leverage to build support around your cause. So we look at both internal and external moments of opportunism, and we actually make lists of them. The internal moments of opportunism are if we know that we're going to be featured in a newspaper, or if we know that we have an event coming up. External moments of opportunism, actually it ends up being MOO if you make it into an acronym. External moments are like the Giants winning the World Series. We were writing blog posts kind of trying to tie the Giants into our savers, our clients. But I want to focus specifically on internal moments of opportunism right now. We held a big event last month in May called the 2011 Asset Awards. This is an annual event that we hold, and it's kind of the one time every year that we get the chance to bring together all of our big supporters and donors into one room and share with them the breadth of what we do at EARN, both on our direct service side and then our policy and our research teams. Want to talk a little more about it?
Yeah, and so this event, aside from gathering our sort of core supporters, there's always a lot of new faces, and so we need to provide them with an experience that they'll remember and they'll want to retell. So we always feature a story of our saver. So actually the story we featured this year was Julia, whose video you saw at the beginning of our presentation. But before we were in a position to really seize on this moment of opportunism, and we've done this a couple of years, we wanted to really change the scale of this event. We wanted to get more people involved, have the word spread even further. We needed to kind of buffer up our communications a bit and sort of make sure we were coming with our best foot forward. So we're going to actually talk about in 3 buckets the things that we did to kind of set ourselves up to take advantage of this moment of opportunism. And those 3 are sort of building out basic infrastructure or building on infrastructure we already had, identifying some key messaging we wanted to create to structure our communications, and then the actual tactics that we employed to actually take advantage of the moment of opportunism.
Right, and so we're going to walk you through how we did this as an organization, and then you're each going to get a handout, and you're going to be able to work through for your organization what infrastructure you currently have, what messaging you would need to craft for an upcoming moment of opportunism that you can identify for your organization, and then you'll be able to start fleshing out some basic tactics that you could use to once again leverage the infrastructure and the messaging. Hopefully it'll become a little clearer after we've walked through some of this, but what we really want is that you'll walk away from this panel with some clear next steps for your organization that are really tangible and that you can bring back to your communications team so that you feel like you've gotten something tangible out of this session.
Or if you don't have a communications team, to anyone in your organization to start that conversation, because it can be difficult to step forward into that. So. So to begin, we wanted to talk about some basic infrastructure we put in place to kind of get this work off the ground. As I said, we've done this event for years in the past, but it's always been kind of difficult for us to find the right story to feature because we've served thousands of people, we have a limited staff. At the time when we both started, there wasn't a communications team, and we were just kind of, the first staff to kind of dive into this area.
And to clarify, that was less than a year ago, so we've built a lot of this up in the past year alone.
Right. But we needed a system really for identifying these stories before anything else so we could get the exact right story for what we wanted. So we actually ended up building an addition to our client tracking database, where we track people's bank accounts and what they're saving for and everything, to actually start tracking story information. So things like, does this person give strong emotional testimony about their life? Like, what hardships have they faced? Are they a good public speaker? Are they willing to speak to the press or media? All these things we have now the ability to start tracking. So that when, aside from that, we also have the demographic information and all that stuff. So we can say, we want to feature someone who's a parent, who has children under the age of 10, who's experienced, such and such hardships because it's going to cater to this particular audience we're speaking with. And we can actually get from that, run literally a report and get a list of 5, 10, 15 names or however many that we can then start working through to get the exact person we want to feature.
Right. So a couple other quick things. There was no communications function, as Matt mentioned, when he and I joined the team last July. So we developed a communications team, kind of a cross-team group that drew in people from all the different departments at EARN, so that when we were coming up with communications messaging for the organization, we would make sure to be representing all the different type of work that we were doing. So we had that team in place, and we'd already been meeting a few times before we started planning for this event. And the third piece is that we had our social media channels basically developed. We had a Facebook account, a Twitter account, YouTube account, a couple thousand fans on Facebook, around the same for Twitter. And I would say that you don't have to have that many followers to be successful, and you could have way more followers and be just as successful or more successful in your social media work. But really what you need to do in terms of infrastructure with social media is make sure that you're very comfortable with communicating with your followers, especially on Facebook and Twitter. I think those are the 2 most important social media channels out there right now. And make sure that you know how to engage. How can you best engage the people that are following you? So we had months of practice asking questions, posting quotes, posting links, posting videos, posting up pictures, and we knew what people reacted to the most and what sort of language and content they engaged with the most. So we had that infrastructure built up. Yeah, so we knew that we had these tools, and we knew that we wanted to create messaging for the Asset Awards. So this cross-team communications group that I talked about, we sat down in our conference room and we stood at the whiteboard, and we basically just started brainstorming all the different ways that we could message this event. Now, we knew that we wanted to feature somebody at the event who could really drive home the point about intergenerational prosperity. You saw in the video earlier that Julia was really focusing on her daughter's well-being. So we were able to talk about Julia's childhood and then her own children and how they were being successful moving into the future. So we knew that we wanted to feature a story like that. When we were brainstorming what messaging we were going to use, we kept asking ourselves, what would we want a parent to say to their kids if they were trying to motivate their children? That sort of seemed like a cool place to start. And the word that we kept coming back to was yes. Yes to opportunity, yes to education, yes to dreams, yes to the future. That's what we're trying to tell our savers. Yes, you have the power to succeed. And that's what we see the parents that we're working with telling their children. So we decided to run with this idea of yes, the yes campaign. And we developed messaging all based around this word yes.
And that leads us to our tactics, which are the specific things we did to actually start using this language.
Yeah, so we kind of broke our communications tactics down into pre-event, during event, and post-event. There were two major challenges that we were facing as an organization coming up on this event. One was that the people who were going to be in the room itself at the event weren't necessarily connected with us on social media, and we wanted to drive them to Facebook especially and become our fans on social media. The second piece was that the people who were connected with us on Facebook weren't necessarily the people who were going to be in the room. And there was a relatively high sticker price to get to this event, so we weren't really wanting to ask the people following us on Facebook to come to the event, because we knew that the demographics might not match up there. So how could we use some general messaging to, one, engage the people on social media, two, engage the people at the room at the event, and three, sort of start merging them together so that people at the event were joining us on Facebook, and people on Facebook were starting to learn about the stuff we were doing offline. So before the event itself, we decided to focus really on our Facebook page. We decided to launch a social media campaign called the Yes Campaign, but on social media. And we asked people through our email listservs and on Facebook itself, on our fan page, to post yes as their status update on Facebook. And we gave them messaging to use after they posted yes, and their friends started asking, what does yes mean? What are you talking about? They had a line that they could post on Facebook, which was, I'm saying yes to opportunity, or something like that. Here's why I'm saying yes. And it had a link. And when somebody clicked on that link, they got taken to a video. And the video was just another story like the one you saw with Julia. But before the story, it said, here's why I'm saying yes on Facebook. And at the end of the story, it said, say yes on Facebook yourself. And it directed people to post yes as their status update. So once again, we're just kind of trying to create this cycle, this viral cycle of getting the word yes out there and tying it into earn. That was really fun. We got to kind of see yes start spreading around our social networks on Facebook. So that was getting the people on Facebook engaged in this messaging for the Asset Awards. That was the first piece. Then when we were reaching out to people who were going to be in the room, once again, remember that other challenge we were facing was getting people who were going to be in the room at the event engaged with us on Facebook. We started pulling them toward Facebook as soon as possible, saying, please register for the event, and we're going to be taking photos at the event, and your photos are going to be on Facebook afterwards, so make sure to become our fan right now. Or even if you can't make the event, make sure to become our fan on Facebook so that you can stay updated on what's going on. Really basic stuff, but we made sure to integrate language about our social media throughout all of our communications to the people who were going to be at the event. So that was our pre-event messaging. At the event itself, we made sure to have yes everywhere. If you'll remember from a slide earlier, there was a picture of somebody holding up a card that said yes. Those were the pledge cards that we handed out at the event itself. When people were writing out their pledge amounts, they held up their pledge cards, and the pledge cards said yes on them. So we got great photos of people holding up yes cards everywhere. You can see that in the top right corner. We also had, you can see on the bottom right, if you want to stay there, Matt, we had a banner with Earn's logo everywhere. And we actually had a little whiteboard that people could hold up that said, I'm saying yes to, and there was a blank. And they could fill in yes to education, yes to prosperity, yes to earn. And they took pictures holding the sign. And then we put the pictures on Facebook right afterward. And we handed out little business cards that said, find your photo on Facebook, 2011 Asset Awards. So we drove people from the event to get onto our Facebook page right afterward. And we even had people coming up right after the event. I don't see the photos on Facebook yet. Where are they? We had to get them up over the weekend, actually, because people were so excited to see them. So once again, driving people from the room to get back onto our Facebook page. And of course, during the event, we were doing live posts on our Facebook to make sure that people who are fans with us, fans of ours there, were feeling included in our offline event.
And meanwhile, while Charlotte's doing all this yes stuff, I'm working with Julia to actually craft the speeches, craft the video. So we actually worked with a filmmaker from Los Angeles to come up and shoot the video. So it was a bit of a resource investment, but I think it paid off. And then even in the speeches themselves, we included a lot of yes language, just to kind of keep that theme going throughout the actual event and the stage work of the event. And even in the other speeches as well, like our CEO talked a lot about the yes language in his speech as well. So it was definitely a unifying theme. We heard a lot of feedback from people that it kind of helps structure everything around this cohesive messaging, and it made it easy for them to retell it because they can kind of use this really simple messaging that we had developed to kind of just spread the word. So.
Right. And then pretty easy, after the event, in all of our follow-up emails to attendees, we said make sure to find your photo on Facebook. We really boosted our Facebook numbers that way. And you'll notice that we were targeting Facebook specifically. Studies show that when you ask people to take too many different types of actions through an email campaign, they tend to take none at all. So I would recommend that if you have an email campaign for your organization, ask people to do one thing. Don't ask them to donate and become your friend on Facebook. Don't ask them to become your friend on Facebook and follow you on Twitter. Focus on that one ask. I would add one other thing that we were doing throughout this on Facebook specifically was we were asking people to take really, really simple actions on Facebook. Click like if you believe that education should be easily accessible to everyone. And we would get 50 or 60 likes. Or write yes in the comments if you agree with X, Y, and Z statement. Those types of things are absolutely crucial. If you're working on Facebook, it's really, really easy to do. Make that direct ask and tie it into the language, once again, that you're working with for your moment of opportunism.
So to get back to the original question, did it actually work? On the fundraising side, it definitely did. We raised twice as much money as we did at the event last year, which was great, but we're not here to talk about fundraising, obviously. But more importantly, we had 25% more people in the room, a lot of new faces, more new faces than we've ever seen, and a lot of comments on the messaging, as I mentioned before. And the engagement on social media shot through the roof as well. We had so many people not only commenting on photos because they felt a connection because they had been there and they were in the photos, but just in general, our engagement metrics on social media went way up.
Right. Yeah.
And so now it's your turn.
Yes, let's take 7 or 8 minutes, and then we'll kind of wrap it up, and we'll do some Q&A, which tends to be one of the most engaging parts of panels, I think.
So we wanted to save a lot of time for Q&A. Questions, anyone? So right here. Yeah.
So you mentioned that with the specific campaign that you guys were talking about, that you like focused on Facebook. So do you think that it's more effective to sort of choose one social network and put all your energy into that, as opposed to being really active with Twitter as well as Facebook? Or is it better maybe to, I guess what I've been doing is trying to keep them really connected with the same message and sort of hopefully getting some back and forth between people that might find us on one versus the other, or...
Yeah. So I mean, that definitely at EARN we use multiple social media channels, and we do try to make sure that they're all on the same page at a given time. When I was talking about focusing specifically on Facebook, that was really emphasizing one channel to our followers at a given time and trying to drive them to the platform, which was Facebook in this case, that made the most sense for them. So we knew from the people that were going to be in the room at our event that they were much more likely to be on Facebook than on Twitter, just looking at demographics for the different platforms. And we didn't want to ask them to join multiple platforms at once because we knew, once again, that they'd be less likely to take any sort of action at all. But we were definitely using that same sort of yes language on Twitter as we were using it on Facebook. I've found through running EARN's social media program that when we ask questions on Facebook, we get a lot of responses. When we ask questions on Twitter, we tend to not get very many at all. For us, Twitter tends to be better when we do link sharing, posting blog posts, engaging in some sort of kind of a higher level conversations about, I don't know, for-profit colleges or kind of random topics, engaging with media. Yeah, so we've kind of found which channels work better for which sorts of communication. So we do echo posts on Facebook, on Twitter, but we were really emphasizing Facebook for this campaign because it seemed to fit better. Is that kind of clear?
Definitely. So you think that like specific calls to action are more effective, and questions with response are more effective on Facebook and
for EARN, that's what I found at EARN. It's not necessarily going to be the same for every different cause, but for us, definitely over the past year, just the people that we've engaged on Facebook tend to be more interested in answering questions. They don't tend to really engage with blog posts very much at all. And then on Twitter, for example, we'll see our blog posts retweeted and responded to left and right. It's just a matter of who we're engaged with on each channel.
And I'll also say we've tried to make an effort to engage our savers, our clients, and we found that they're much more likely to be on Facebook than, let's say, Twitter. So it's been an important part of crafting that authentic voice about our work, is getting them involved in the work as well. So
yeah, but I'd emphasize that it's going to be different for each organization because really Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, those are just platforms. They're platforms for people to engage. We could have taken a different approach on Twitter a year ago and ended up with 2,000 completely different followers, and the way we would engage them would be totally different. So it's really going to depend on who your most active followers are on the different platforms that you're engaging with them on.
Right down here in the front.
It's about welcoming immigrants more fully into our communities, and it's based on a documentary that just aired on PBS called Welcome to Shelbyville. And the project is called Shelbyville Multimedia. I was wondering, for Facebook, what's a good way to get word out for list building? We've been having some problems building the Facebook likes, because mainly, I think probably because we work with a lot of partner organizations, and the likes from pages don't count towards the likes that are publicly shown, and we would like to increase more individual engagement and interaction, so it goes to many Facebook profiles.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I mean, that's one of the toughest problems for all of us who are engaged on social media, really that basic thing of how do I build up my likes? How do I build up my followers on Twitter? The answer, once again, is going to really depend on the organization. If you have any sort of budget at all to work with, Facebook ads are great. They have a really high return on investment. That's what we've seen at Earn. I like them more than I like Google ads. If you have, I mean, that is still something that you should try out. You know, if you can get a Google grant, you can actually direct people through those ads to your Facebook page. But I think Facebook ads are a great way to go. Another thing is to really flesh out a clear partnership agreement with the partner organizations that you're working with on how you're going to mutually advertise one another's programs. And if you can specifically ask them to be posting your content on their Facebook page and driving people to your page. This can be kind of tough when organizations are working with one another, because we're kind of stuck in a weird, antiquated model when it comes to mutually advertising one another's organizations. There's this idea that social media is a zero-sum game, and if I send people to your Facebook page, they'll like you, and I'll lose them as a follower. Unfortunately, like I said, it's really antiquated, because social media is all about growing the pie. If we drive people to someone's page, if I drive you to somebody's page and you like their page, you're gonna like me more too, because I sent you content that you found relevant to you. And that's the way that we need to start thinking about social media. We need to support one another's organizations. At Earn, at least, we're really comfortable with directing our followers to other people's pages and supporting each other's organizations, because really we want the world to be better, and if we see that an organization is doing great work, we want them to have the support they need. So I would encourage a really honest conversation with your partners. There's a lot of great research out there about what I just said, about how you can expand the pie and not look at social media as a zero-sum game. So maybe I can tweet some of that stuff out on the on Earn's Twitter later, and you can find that research. I'd be happy to do that and present that to them and see if they can start really directly sending people over to your page.
And I would echo something that Charlotte said earlier, which is to experiment with your messages that you're putting out and see what gains more traction. I found that a lot of our success at Earn has been because we've experimented and we said, well, let's try this, well, let's try something different and see which one kind of works better. So.
Right, yeah, it makes me think also, there's been some research done lately, just over the last couple of weeks, about the algorithm that Facebook uses in how it decides which different pieces of content will appear on someone's news feed when they sign into Facebook. A couple key takeaways are that, one, you want to utilize videos and links as much as possible. They tend to get Facebook weighs them, gives them more weight than it does text posts on Facebook. The other thing is that as many likes and comments as you can get on a post, the better. So what we were doing at Earn when we were really first building up our number of Facebook likes is we would have our staff like every post that we put up. It's kind of like sneaky, but you know, if we could get 10 likes on something, then it would start appearing on somebody's newsfeed and they would have the opportunity to like it. Really, the Facebook algorithm doesn't always give your post the opportunity to be seen by the crowd that you're trying to reach out to. So see how many friends and like family members you can get to commit to liking things or leaving comments, just until you reach the point where your posts are getting shown to the general public on a frequent basis. And then you can back off the sneaky tactics.
And Charlotte gives out candy at staff meetings for people who are really engaged in social media.
I do. I bribe staff
I would
members.
try that as well. Other questions? Over here up front in the black jacket.
I was wondering if you found social media helpful for engaging older generations, because I mean our target mostly as parents, older parents and grandparents, to get involved with our education foundation. I was wondering if you found social media useful for that, or if there's a different communication tactic for that demographic.
That's an interesting question. Our most engaged demographics on Facebook, I can tell you, are first people between 25 and 35, and second people between the ages of 35 and 45. So we are kind of hitting the parent demographic in that second highest group. The fastest growing demographic right now on Facebook are the people who are like 45, 50 and up. So that is a good sign, but it can be harder to reach out to those people. Once again, Facebook ads, they let you target based on age. So if you have any sort of budget, I would really recommend going that route. Another option is to partner with organizations that are specifically reaching out to those age groups. So if you can connect with AARP at all, they're really active on social media. At AARP on Twitter or at AARP Innovation. Those are two really active accounts. And we've developed a relationship with them basically solely through social media over the past year, and they will send out our tweets and kind of send people our way and retweet our stuff. I say them because I know they're once again another one of those organizations that doesn't feel scared to tweet about other people's work. And celebrate other organizations doing great work. So look for other organizations that have already built up the online community of people in that demographic, and then try to engage with the people there where they already are and kind of, bring them over to your work.
Over here in the sort of teal sweater.
Hi, you said that the fact that your event raised double the amount of money was like a secondary issue. And no, I'm just asking because I know in our organization, if we put that much effort and my primary goal was just to double my Facebook users, my president would laugh all of the way.
Well, we say that for the purpose of this presentation, but we
Okay.
were pretty psyched about that.
Well, no, I mean, seriously, in the sense of, for us, Facebook and Twitter, et cetera, is an effort to raise more money. And if the money doesn't come in the end, then the social networking will be not seen by him particularly as successful. And secondarily, programming in the end is the most important. So the money is a mean to programming, the Facebook is a mean to get there. And I just want to know, is that the same, or is, or do you have other, I guess my ultimate question is, do you have other goals just related to Facebook that you think are successful for your organization?
I can talk about the cross-team. So we mentioned as part of the infrastructure, we created this cross-team group within EARN. So we actually identified 4 communications goals, which we're now calling our 4 communications pillars. And one of them was raising money, raising the resources to continue our work. But for the purposes of this presentation, we wanted to focus on building the network, because I think it's about increasing the pie in general, because the more people you have, the more awareness, the more fundraising, the more everything.
Yeah, to speak to those other communications goals, though, one is to be seen as a thought leader in our field, and a lot of that involves reaching out to media through social media and other forms of communication. One is engaging and exciting a diverse and growing set of stakeholders. I always remember that one because it's very related to our social media work. I don't know, there's another one that one is to change the national discourse on economic mobility and opportunity, because we see a lot of people focus on or look at direct service and kind of using an approach that's different from the lens we use. And then, once again, bolstering our development team's work and our fundraising work. But that is just one of our 4 goals. And whenever we're going to start a communications campaign, we have to stop and see which goals it's really fitting into and which ones we're going to be targeting on that given campaign. I think it's always essential for your communications team or individual or whoever's working on communications at your organization to start with those top level goals and make sure that your work is always grounded in some bigger vision.
And that reminds me, we're launching a microsite soon called mydebtstory.com, which is a platform for people to share stories about education debt. We actually have some flyers if you want to grab some on your way out and you want to spread the word. But that site, we're not actually focusing on raising money. It's solely about raising awareness about the issue and sort of tying EARN to that work. Because every opportunity isn't always just an opportunity to raise money, although obviously programs are the heart of everything. We want to make sure we have money to fund them. But growing your audience in general will help you raise money, will help you become a thought leader, and all these other things that are important for your work. So,
it's also, really quickly, it's worth looking at how your donors got connected with you in the first place. We've been able to kind of track back, looking at our top level donors and asking them, how do you find out about us? How do you get engaged? There was one piece in, I believe it was the San Francisco Chronicle, profiling our CEO a handful of years ago that drew like half of our donors to earn, our donors that we've retained to this day. So once we knew that, now we know that there are certain types of media outlets we should be targeting through our communications, because we know that our donors are really attracted to those sorts of pieces. So taking a step back, looking at your donors that you have right now, finding out how they became engaged with you, and figuring out how you can use your communications to create more of those opportunities for people to find you, I think is a great strategy.
So I think we had one question up front here and then in the back here. So the pink shirt and then the brown.
We've got a little less than 5 minutes, so we have one up at the top too. I don't want to forget you. We'll do those three.
Quick logistics question about the Yes campaign on Facebook. Once you told people to put yes on their status, how did you follow up with them to tell them yes to what?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we had already, I think there are two pieces to this. We created a tab on our Facebook page. There are those tabs on the left-hand side now. They used to be on the top, but Facebook mysteriously changes its format every 3 months, and we get to adapt. We created a tab using, I'm forgetting what the program was, but there are some basic HTML editors. I'm not good with HTML, but if you know how to do like bracket B, you can figure out the basics. So we had a tab that kind of had the basic instructions. Post yes on Facebook. When somebody asks you what yes means, type this in, help us make this thing go viral. So in terms of instructions, we directed people to that link, which gave them the instructions. When we were sending out emails and stuff, we would have the instructions. We would say, you know, if you want to pass this on to your friends, make sure you give them this link with the instructions. The harder thing was tracking who was engaging in this. Because you can't just do a search for yes on Facebook and see who's engaging. And really, to be honest, we haven't been able to come up with a grand total of the number of people who engaged. It hasn't been a huge concern for us because we really spent maybe 3 or 4 hours prepping for that campaign. It was coming up with the language, shooting it out to our supporters and our staff members, and just kind of seeing how it took off. And we were okay internally not walking away with a clear list of outcomes from that experiment. That's not something every organization is going to be comfortable with. So it's important to just think ahead of time, how much am I going to be able to measure in terms of the success of this campaign? And will we feel okay as an organization having this limited amount of data coming out of it? Yeah, that's kind of the best answer I can give.
So should we go over here in the corner and then in the back as well?
Hi, thank you. I'm with Wages, Women's Action to Gain Economic Security, and we have a very small staff right now, and our communications department is me and another kind of our development director. We're building our social media presence and our visibility, but it's coming along slowly. And I'm wondering, in developing this Yes campaign for the event, how time intensive or like staff, you know, time or meeting wise, how many times did you meet? Who was in the room during that brainstorming process to kind of come up with that yes, you know, how intensive did it take?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as I said, we have this cross-team communications group that met for about an hour a couple of times on this, and then we had a smaller work group, which was our development team. That's 3 individuals and myself. And we met for little half-hour periods a handful of times, probably 4 or 5 times before the event. So that's quite a few hours in meetings as it is. And then before the event itself, let's see, I didn't bring my tracking spreadsheet. I track my time because it's very important to us to be able to factor in staff time into the cost of holding these campaigns. Quite a few hours, 10, 12 hours beforehand, consistently spent developing this. And then at the event and after the event, a lot of this was actually just sort of taking the place of my normal job. I do social media, so embedding this language into my regular social media. Took up quite a few hours. I don't have a specific number for you, but there were, at any given moment, 3 or 4 people working on this.
So maybe one final question in the back there. Do we have time for one more?
Thank you. I've been around for 20 years, but I'm just starting to get the social part going. And we did my whole website. Facebook has a nonprofit free website, free pages, and then they have a regular free public pages. Have you found a difference between the two?
I'm not sure I understand the distinction that you're making.
The nonprofit pages can have more. They can have videos, they can have more stories, they have more room. So I was just wondering if you've used either.
Okay. Yeah, so there are many different ways that you can kind of organize your community on Facebook. You could build, for example, a personal profile. That's what most of us have as individuals. There are also groups, and then there are pages, and within pages, as you've mentioned, you can kind of specify which sort of page you're going to start. There are business pages, nonprofit pages, different types of things. I say, categorize your page to the best of your ability along the lines of what it is that you're doing. If you're a nonprofit, make sure to select the nonprofit page. What that allows, more than sort of controlling which sort of content you're able to post on your page, that makes it easier for people to find you. If they're scouring Facebook trying to find a nonprofit in a given field, economics or whatever, they'll be able to find your page more easily. So yeah, always try to put yourself where Facebook would envision your organization being located on the platform.
How much link do you have between Facebook and your website?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
How much link do you have between Facebook and your website?
Quite a bit. And actually, we redesigned our website. And this is part of the infrastructure that we didn't really talk about, but I think it was in November, the end of last year, we redesigned our website. And I wish I could pull it up here, but
those of you who have redesigned a website know that it wasn't in October that we redesigned it.
Right.
It was in 2010 that we redesigned our website. Yeah, it launched in October.
But part of the redesign was to be able to feature stories more and also feature links to social media more. So everything's kind of much more shareable on our site. Stories are front and center right at the top. So there's a lot more connections now on our site between social media and our website.
But I would add that on our website, really, most of the information is static. The information that we're changing on a regular basis are, I guess, blog posts and news mentions. But most of the other content is pretty static. On our Facebook and Twitter, on the other hand, it's really the opposite. It's constantly changing content. So if we're having a low content day and don't really know what to post, we can always link to parts of the website that we think our audience hasn't seen yet that they might be interested in. But Facebook and Twitter, we're constantly putting up new content and sharing. The website's pretty static.
So I think we're up on time. We'd be happy to hang out for a bit and answer any of the questions that you might have. And we have our cards if you want to get in touch with us, etc.
Thank you all for coming.
All right, thanks.